Hi, it's David Avrin with the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. As we all know, marketing has changed. Messaging and gaining publicity for your brand has changed dramatically in the digital age. In yesteryear, getting publicity for your business involves sending press releases to the big three TV networks or the big 3 or 4 newspapers and hoping to catch Oprah's attention. My God, the world has changed. My guest today is Gini Dietrich. She's the creative and strategic mind behind Spin Sucks, a strategic consulting firm helping to solve complex corporate communication challenges. This is right up my alley. We are talking about why Spin Sucks with PR icon Gini Dietrich. It's David Avrin on the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. Back in 20 seconds.
You're listening to the Customer Experience Advantage podcast with David Avrin, featuring candid conversations with some of the most influential leaders in business today. Sit back and listen in, or feel free to watch the video version online. This is the Customer Experience Advantage podcast, and here's David Avrin.
Welcome to the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. I'm David Avrin. If you want to watch the video version, go to my website, go to the YouTube channel, go to davidavrin.com/podcast, I think it is. Anyway, it's near the top. I'm thrilled today to talk to Gini Dietrich. She has been, I don't think she wants me to call her an icon because she thinks it makes her sound old. And if you can see the video version, she's got great hair. She is not at all old, but we've known each other for a long time, and we did a lot of work in the Vistage world and things as well. But freaking brilliant. We have a lot of the same background. My background, I don't know that a lot of people know this, was in PR. I spent a lot of years pitching clients, getting them on all the major networks and everything else. And I actually had a client on Oprah, and I got her on Oprah because I got her on Good Morning America, and somebody from Harvard thought her there. So I used to tell people all the time, I say, you want to get on Oprah, which of course is all passé now because she's long gone. That was the holy grail at the time. I said, you want to get on Oprah? Get your client on one of the other big networks. They don't want to discover people. They want somebody who's already on their way up for whatever. All right, no more Oprah. I'll give you a quick introduction to Gini, and then we'll jump into all of this. She is the founder and CEO of Armin Dietrich, which is a digital marketing communications firm offering alternatives to traditional marketing. She is best known by so many people as the author of Spin Sucks, and she's got a blog and a wonderful online community of other professionals who are learning together. And she teaches other PR and marketing people to be better at what they do. And there's so many people who are not very good at what they do. And so I think that's really important. But what's really important, what we want to talk about today, is how much has changed. Mm-hmm. My God, the world is so different. And what's effective today is phenomenally different. So anyway, welcome, Gini. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I feel like I'm coming home.
It is. Well, you do this, of course, as well. And I was recalling with Gini before we went on air that the last time I saw her, I literally had run into her in a lobby of a hotel in Chicago after I had driven all night long because my plane got diverted. I had a speaking gig, and I can say in 20 plus years of speaking, I've never missed a scheduled speaking gig, and 4 times I've driven all night together, and then show up, of course, like in my jeans and a t-shirt saying it's so great to be here. Had my luggage actually arrived as well, it would be even better. But they like that.
Especially that group that nobody cares. Yeah, they
think it's really fun. So talk to me a little bit about, or talk to all of us about where we've been to give us perspective of where we are today. Because it is sure it's more difficult, but the opportunities and the vehicles and the venues to promote your brand and your message are astronomically bigger. But the competition is pretty fierce as well. So take us back to yesteryear and talk us through the transition to where we are today.
I love to tell the story of when I started my career, and we would be pitching media. So we had a big product campaign launch or some new feature launching or something like that. We would plan out our media relations campaigns. And there was no Google. There was no going to a media outlet's website to figure out who reported on cranberry juice. You had to pull down out of the library these great big thick Bacon's books. They were green.
Yeah, I was going to say, the Bacon, the green one.
Yep. And then you'd go and you'd say, okay, you'd go to the F and look for food. or food and beverage, and you would copy all the pages because you couldn't keep the Bacon's books out of the library for very long. Copy all the pages, put the book back, and then you'd go back to your office and you would start making phone calls.
Right.
And reporters would actually pick up the phone. And that's how we started. Like, that's how I started my career. And anytime that you discovered that somebody had left, you would go back to the Bacon's book and you would annotate in the on the side of the note to say, okay, so-and-so is no longer there, but this person has taken over and here's his or her information. So that has,
and then every year we had to go back because it all had changed.
All of it.
And the people had moved as well. And for clarification, and I am remiss in not, you have worked with major brands such as Ocean Spray, Sprint, Denny's, GE, Abbott, and others as well. So you know where you're coming from, but it was very different in yesteryear.
Very different. Yeah. I mean, kids today have it so easy. All they have to do is go food and beverage reporter.
Well, I remember we were kids. If you didn't know how to spell something, you'd be like, "Mom, how do you spell campaign?" And Mom would say, "Look it up in the dictionary."
Yep. Dictionary. Yeah.
Yeah, those kind of things as well. So talk about the monumental shift. And I know you addressed this in your book, Spin Sucks, but this monumental shift to digital and what that meant in terms of challenges and opportunities and where we are today.
Sure. I think the big shift was probably in that 2007 to 2010, maybe 2011 range, because we had several things happen. We had the Great Recession, which took a lot of businesses either out of doing communications altogether or scaling way back.
Right.
We had Twitter that became a household name. We had Facebook go from universities into corporations, LinkedIn launched. So there was all of this stuff. Companies began to understand that they could do this newfangled thing called blogging and actually tell their own story without relying on editors, reporters to do that for us. And so there was all of this stuff that was happening at the same time. And because it happened at the same time as the Great Recession, it gave organizations and business leaders the opportunity to say, okay, what can we do with all of this now, and how will it help us grow in the future?
But with any new medium, it's immediately not either, it's all sort of simultaneously, it's done poorly.
Sure.
Right? And it was the difference between selling on social media and sharing on social media. And that became sort of a mind shift. But then it's also abused and taken over by everything from spam, which in my day was a luncheon meat made up of poor pork products, and then but then also the nefarious forces, the scammers, the pornography, and all of those things as well. What was the magic formula that you arrived at early on to cut through some of the clutter, and what's working well today?
So we actually really looked at one of the challenges that I had in my business as a PR firm was we had these peaks and valleys, and you could get on GMA and then be on Oprah, and then could easily have 6 months of nothing. And when you're working with business leaders, that's not okay. They don't like that. They're like, wait, I just went from Good Morning America and Oprah to not having anything. So there's these peaks and valleys that happen when you're doing just media relations. And the reason I really took a hold of this for my own business and then wrote a book about it and all that is that it gave us the opportunity to smooth out those valleys. So you have a big piece on Good Morning America, and then Oprah gets a hold of it. And then in today's age, you would take that and you would repurpose the heck out of it. You would do blog posts, and you would do social, and you do some paid campaigns. You might do some email marketing and some conversion rate optimization on landing pages and things like that. You would combine it all together in a really big integrated campaign. So it gives you that opportunity to not have the peaks and valleys, but just have a nice, good cadence of brand awareness and lead generation.
Well, that's what we're seeing a lot is content used to be episodic. It happened and then was done. And even in the days of the old Burrell's Loose, where we would do the press clippings, which physically were people cutting out, right? And then we would do what we call the weight measurement of public relations, where we would go back to the client and say, look at all the clips, and then try and extrapolate in some BS kind of a way in terms of what those impressions actually meant.
Correct.
I remember there's an old line in marketing that the people used to say, I know that half of my advertising dollars are wasted. I just don't know which half.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Today we know exactly, don't we? And so that episodic content has become we can turn that into campaigns. Talk to us
Correct.
about the state of all of that as well, and how some of the best companies and the ones that you work with are doing this well. It's not about, we got that hit and how long can we write it. It's as we create, as you had sort of mentioned, people creating their own content and our own channels for distribution, but that has a shelf life that can be amazing.
So I'm going to give you a really good example that just happened. We have a client that Ripken Baseball is one of their partners, and Ripken just opened, they have several fields in Aberdeen, Maryland that are replicas of actual fields. So they just opened 2 new fields. One, it's going to escape me now. One for Citibank, which I think is Pittsburgh. I'm not a baseball person.
I'm going to sacrifice my man card because I don't.
Yeah. I should know this off the top of my head, and I don't. But they opened 2 new fields that are replicas, and did a ribbon cutting. So I sent the client, the CEO of the client's business, a customer service person, and then I sent our videographer and our social media person, and they all went to the ribbon cutting. And as part of this, I discovered that Jeff Mayer, who is the now man who ruined game 1 of the World Series in Baltimore between the Orioles and the Yankees in 1996, he caught the ball.
Oh yeah. He reached over the wall.
He did.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, Jeff Mayer is now a 36-year-old man with 3 kids, and he works for my client's organization. So I had him 2 days before, I had him record a video, just not his face or anything, just talking about the importance of Ripken's baseball experience, and that he has sent his sons there. And then the CEO showed that video to Cal Ripken Jr. and said, "Do you know who this is?" And he was like, "No." And he said, "It's Jeff Mayer." And like the whole reaction. And then Cal Ripken says on video, "I forgive you. It wasn't really you. It was it's great. Right? It's fantastic. We are going to use the crap out of that. Like, we've sent it to all the Baltimore media. We've sent it to all the big sports stations. We have all of this footage that's really great. We'll use it on social. We've already used it on social. We'll continue. We've used it on the blog. Like, we're continuing to use that in a really interesting way, because that's not going to happen for every organization. And I had no idea that this guy worked there.
Creative mind finds that, mines those opportunities, and milks the crap out of them.
Right.
Yeah. But this is one of the things that I think you're very good at, and I'm sucking up a little bit, mostly just because I like you a lot. Is that you understand all the differences. Back in our day, we had paid media, which was advertising,
right,
and then what people mistakenly called free publicity, right? Well, free publicity is free if it happens organically, which wasn't even a term at the time, but you're paying for a firm, you're paying for people, and there's nothing that's free.
It's not free.
Right. And so, but it's grown, right? With paid media and earned media and all of those as well. You've created a process that you call Peso, with the PESO. Take us through all of that, because what I think is so brilliant about it is it really helps to sort of demystify all the different ways you can take a concept or content or brand and all the different channels to maximize the exposure. Take us through what that is.
So I was talking about those peaks and valleys earlier, and really it used to be that we would go out and we would pitch some media, and then that was it. And now we have the opportunity to say, okay, like I said, we can replicate that, or we can reproduce or repurpose in all different places. So when I was writing Spin Sucks, the book, I talked about this process that we used internally, and it didn't have a name yet. And it wasn't formulated with like a graphic and a name and copyright and all of that.
It was just how you did what you did.
Right. It's just what we did. Right. And I had a brilliant publisher who, after the first draft, said to me, "We need a name for this, and we need an image to go along with it." So I went on to Upwork and I hired a designer, and he created this image for me. Like, it was not, but it turns out that a couple of things. Number one, Peso stands for paid, earned, shared, and owned. And
say it again slowly for those who are listening.
Paid, earned, shared, and owned. So you have paid media, and we're not talking about Super Bowl ads and billboards and things like that. We're talking about boosting content. We're talking, the things that communicators would be responsible for: boosting content, native advertising, the advertorials of old that are now sponsored content, those kinds of things.
Sure.
Earned is the media relations. We're earning the opportunity to have somebody else sort of give us that rubber stamp.
Right. By being persuasive that the story that we are pitching is of value to that outlet and their
Correct.
Audience.
Yes.
That is earned. We earn it through our persuasion.
Yes.
Yes.
Shared is social. And then owned is content. So when you think about it from an integrated perspective and you look at it all together, you start to understand that you're not just doing one thing. You're not just pitching media. You're not just writing a blog post. You're not just doing this video with Cal Ripken and that's it. You're doing that and then using the other media types to help promote it. So one of the things that people say to me all the time is, but you wouldn't really start with paid. And that's true. But when we were naming the model, usually you would start with owned and then go to shared or earned and then paid. But OS is harder to remember, or OS, like I can't even
starting
with
the constant helps.
Right.
Yeah.
It does help. Yeah. So usually you do start with owned content. So just like in the Ripken example I gave you, we own that content. We created that content. And now we're using earned media to give it that third-party credibility stamp to say, this was kind of cool. We're using social to promote and amplify it. And then we're using paid to give it a boost to get to new audiences. So it starts to work together and integrate it in a way that we've never been able to do.
So when you have a story idea, you've got a client who has something to promote, a brand to build, and some of the more current vernacular, where do you start? As part of that acronym, or is it, let's be clear, who needs to hear what it is you're promoting, and how do you take them through a process that they understand it better?
Yeah, usually we'll start with objectives and key results. We'll look at KPIs, what are the metrics that we have to do? Who is it that we're talking to? Do you have brand personas? And if you do, who are they and how do we approach that? One of the things we learned recently with a client is that they were calling their audience something different than what the audience calls themselves. Nobody knew that. And as part of this process of us asking questions, it was uncovered. So we go through all of that, and then we start the Peso model program. So you do all your research and your planning and your objective building and your metrics and all that, and then you create the Peso model program. And for us, we do mostly SaaS businesses. So sure. We almost always start with owned. We always start with the content piece and then build the rest of it out.
Yeah. When you were talking about that what they're searching for, and sometimes there's a disconnect. And that's one of those things that is really foundational. So much of what we think as business owners makes us special isn't, and the thing that I laugh all the time is I work with organizations and they say, what's your big competitive advantage? And they'll say, first and foremost, it's quality, and I'm like, so you're saying your competitors don't have quality? Right. Or at the beginning of the day, it's about quality. And I'm like, I think at the end of the day, it's about quality. I'm like, no, I think quality is the entry fee. At the beginning of the day, it's quality. At the end of the day, it's competitive advantage.
Right.
What they think that people are looking for is them. And what they're looking for, of course, is the problem that they have. And so there is that disconnect. Yep. Let's go back to the owned media. And so this is one that I think many organizations, some of the smaller businesses, have yet to really understand. Back in the day, we'll take us back to yesteryear, we pitched to try and get our content, our client, on somebody else's channel, which at the time was a physical channel that you clicked on the dial. And so today we create our own channels, don't we? We can have our own YouTube channel. So when we're talking about owned content, it's content that we create that we can distribute through our own networks, our own channels, and others as well. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. And I want to be, I think people start to get a little frustrated at this point, because when we talk about owned content, we're talking about the content that we've created that lives and is distributed through something that we own. So through our website, through our blog, through our email marketing, those things. Where we're using the other media types, such as social, shared, earned, and paid, is we're now using other distribution channels, are things that we don't own. So I always like to start, and especially for a small business, You don't want to create all this content and then put it on Facebook and LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or wherever it happens to be, or YouTube. And then one day wake up to learn that that business has gone out of business and all of your content went with it. And that has happened. It happened.
And your audience and your subscribers.
And your audience and your
Yeah.
audience.
I talked last week in my podcast. I had a gentleman who was in the cannabis industry and had done a lot of things through LinkedIn. And then all of a sudden it got shut down. And so they've created their own through LeafWire, their own ecosystem for conversation within that industry. But yeah, putting your content on rented land is a real challenge. Doesn't mean we ignore it. It doesn't mean we ignore it. That's the S part, right? Of Peso. That's the social part.
Yeah.
The owned is really important, and it will be more so moving forward.
Yeah. And I think a lot of small businesses have this inclination to say, oh, okay, well, I can just build something on Facebook because it has an e-commerce platform and I can just do that and it's fine. And it's probably fine for now, but Facebook may not be around forever. I mean, the issues that they're going through from a government perspective, a global government perspective, it could mean that they could be shut down, and then your online stores too. That's not good.
Yeah. Oh, I had a major MySpace presence, and actually not true. You know, it's funny. My first book, it's not Who You Know, It's Who Knows You, which is strategically located next to my head.
Of course, yes.
In the chapter, because it's an old book now. There was a whole chapter on MySpace, and so I came up with my updated version, I just threw away that.
Took that out.
But I think you're right. But it doesn't mean that some of these channels, because that's where the people are certainly of great value. You cannot also just solely put things on owned space. When people post things on their website and nobody's going to their website, it's not an either or, is it? It's an and an and.
Correct. Yeah. I just literally right before you and I started talking, I had a conversation with a colleague, and she said, well, I just don't know if we have to stress about it because people aren't coming to our blog every day and clicking to see what we've published. And I was like, no, but they're getting it in the email, which has a really high click-through rate, and they're seeing it on social. And she goes, oh yeah. It's not just publishing it on the blog or the website. It's publishing it and then just distributing it in all the different places.
Well, but the other thing is, and I'd love you to talk a little bit about this, but there's a lifespan. I mean, it is, I used to have this line I used to say that I tell my kids who are no longer kids and their friends, I say, be careful about what you post, because I'd ask them, you know the difference between love and the internet? The internet is forever. And ever. It's horrible. Who says
and
that?
Who
says it? That is a cynical, bitter. That is a bitter thing to say to my kids. But the reality is, it is, right?
It is.
Whether it's the offensive comment, we used to, in our day, even early on with email, is like, take a deep breath, sit on it for a day before you hit send. Well, now it's instantaneous. It's like, oh, really? It's son of a bitch. And I mean, you're going to respond.
Yeah.
You think that level of crispness of bacon, you're choosing C? My God, it's D. What an idiot. Who cares how crisp your bacon? That's not as a cheap way of getting likes. But the longevity of it from a negative perspective, but certainly from a positive, many of us are finding that we're getting gigs, whatever gig looks like to the audience, from somebody who saw something that you posted or shared years ago, but they discovered it because it came up in a search.
Yep, that's exactly that's called, it has a name, it's long tail search engine optimization. And that's how that's supposed to work. So I also like to go back and with some of that older stuff that has such a great long tail and update it. Like you said, with your book, taking things out that no longer apply, making it more evergreen, updating it so it's a little more relevant. There was a lot of content that I created during the pandemic that, today needs to be updated. So thinking about that kind of thing, like all of this content you've created, now you can go back and update it and repurpose it with not that much effort. And it's great because you don't have to create something new. You've got something that you can just tweak.
We're talking to Gini Dietrich with Spin Sucks and also Arment Dietrich, the firm as well. Take us back in a couple minutes we have left. So what was the genesis for the book title that has turned into this amazing community blog podcast and everything else?
I had an intern who said to me, if we're going to try this blogging thing, we should call it Spin Sucks. And I was like, can we do that? And he said, well, that's all you ever say, because, you get on an elevator with somebody and you're on a plane or, at a cocktail reception, and people say, what do you do? And you say PR. The inevitable response back is, oh, you're one of those who lies for a living. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not. So, yeah. So I have always said that Spin Sucks. And this intern, who's brilliant and will always get credit for it, was like, no, that's what we should name it. And so we did.
That's awesome. So who do you work with today? Who are you don't have to name specific names, but you had mentioned something about SaaS, software as a service, which is those kinds of organizations. What do you like about those? What kind of work really gets you up in the morning you love doing today?
It's the best, because we work directly with growth-oriented vertical SaaS businesses. And the reason we like that the best is because we can see the work that we're doing have an impact really fast. So we know how to do it. We know we have a really great process. And when it's implemented, you can see it. You can see it in terms of qualified leads. You can see it in terms of sales conversions. You can see it in revenue. And I love it.
Well, and I think there's something to be said for looking at those growth industries. I used to do a lot of work with sewing machine manufacturers and video cassette recorders. And so there was just a limited and camera repair shops. There's always going to be a limit, right? To those as well.
Sewing machines.
If I was trying to think what else is antiquated. And whiteout manufacturers,
typewriters
and payphones. Yeah, all of that as well. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Spinsucks.com.
There you go. Easy breezy. Hang out. We'll talk real quickly on the other side. I'll do my little outro. Look her up. Get involved in the Spin Sucks community. It's great conversations in there as well. You can pick up a copy of my new book behind me here, The Morning Huddle, Powerful Customer Experience Conversations to Wake You Up and Shake You Up and Win More Business. And if you want to learn more about the video series, go to themorninghuddle.com. Learn more about that. Be sure to click to like this podcast, subscribe, leave a comment below, click the little bell icon to receive notifications of new episodes. And you can learn more about my keynote speaking and my consulting at davidavrin.com. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Customer Experience Advantage podcast. Leave a comment, subscribe, and a big thanks to Gini Dietrich for being my guest today. I'm David Avrin. Be good.
This has been the Customer Experience Advantage podcast with David Avrin. Feel free to leave a comment and be sure to hit the thumbs up button. You can listen to past episodes and be notified of future ones by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. David's popular marketing and customer experience books are available in print, as well as Kindle and audiobook, and published in multiple languages around the world. You can stay connected and learn more at davidavrin.com. Thanks for tuning in.